Hey, what's going on, YouTube? How are you? Thank you so much for coming by. I hope you're doing well. Hiker Dave, any Bigfoot here. I just watched a video, and I kind of had a bunch of thoughts after watching this video on YouTube. It was from Bigfoot Odyssey. I was watching. He came out with a 2018 or 2019. It was just recent. If you haven't seen his video, check it out. Awesome, awesome channel. What this guy's doing is really, really cool. Him and his wife seem really, really like nice people. But I got some ideas from watching his video. So I want to give him credit. Thank you very much, Bigfoot Odyssey. This is kind of thanks to you that some of these ideas popped into my head. So I want to start with the idea that I believe Sasquatch really, really enjoy watching us and watching our everyday goings on, so to speak, right? And I got to thinking, you know, the forest. I love being out in the forest. I love hiking out there, but I think if I lived in the forest, I would need some kind of something else other than the trees and the leaves and the bushes and the squirrels and chipmunks and woodland creatures and such, right? That I would need more than that. And I kind of believe maybe that they get bored, in that they will definitely, for entertainment, come to the fringes of our society and observe. I believe that they may come close to us for reasons for gardens, dumpsters, to feed. Of course, after observing our habits, they'll do these kind of things. And in Bigfoot Odyssey's video, he went to a gentleman's house who was having his dog food was being stolen and all kinds of stuff. And if you haven't seen the video, check it out. You got to. It was awesome. I watched the whole entire thing, and I loved it. But something was stealing his food, and that got me to thinking, you know, if you've got apple trees or peach trees or a garden or something like that, they're gonna, and you're near an area, a wooded area, or an access point where something as large as a Sasquatch could potentially come near your property in the dead of night while you're sleeping. Just come right on your property and pick the apples off your apple tree, or pick the tomatoes out of your garden, or you know, so on and so forth, things like this. And I think that they like to observe us, not only for their own self-preservation, to, you know, that old proverb, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. They want to know where we are and what we're doing. And that's why I don't believe you that a sighting can only happen when you're 10 miles deep into the forest. I think your sighting, your possibility of having a sighting is just as good in a national park or national forest or a state forest where there's a lot of people around. And I think that they like to watch us camp and hike, mountain biking and fishing, and playgrounds, and watching and listening to the kids playing at a playground or something like that. And it kind of made me think of like what we like to do, and some similarities between us and Sasquatch. And this is only my theory. And so let's just get that right out, that these are just theories of mine, things that go around in my head. Like, for instance, you know, you go to a small town, a small isolated town somewhere, in a highly wooded area. People make a day of it when they just go to the store. I have family that lives up north in New Hampshire. And when they go to the store, it's not just running down the street. It's like a thing. It's, you know, a list is made, and they'd say, you know, to them it's right down the street. But me being kind of from the city area, when they say I'm running to the store, well, you can count on the fact that you're not going to see them for a while. Or if you go for a ride to the corner store, it is not just a corner store. And it's kind of an event. And I picture people living in backwoods cabins and stuff like that, that they got to get out of their environment for a little bit, right? And go down and get some excitement, go into town, to the local, to the local gin mill or the local pub. And that's kind of entertainment for them. And I think Sasquatch may do the same, that they spend so much time out in like the same kind of forested area that they got to get bored, especially the young ones, I would think. Imagine being a teenager, a teenage Bigfoot, and you've been eating bark off trees and grubs and deer meat and all this stuff like that, and you've got an opportunity to maybe when you're the elders aren't watching, to go down and get closer and maybe grab a handful of dog food or cat food or raid a bird feeder or something like that, right? So that got me thinking, you know, and another thing too, and of course I have all this written down. Now, as humans, we go to nature preserves and we go out into wild areas to observe woodland creatures. I know I do. I love that. I love going out and seeing a deer or just watching a beaver do his thing or whatever, what have you, just to go out into nature and watch that. And I think that can be reversed. When it comes to Bigfoot, I believe that they enjoy to watch us and watch our daily routines. My opinion, my theory, and I think that's why I see sign that's close to hiking trails and trailheads in the parking lots of these state parks and stuff like that, and out behind people's houses and things like that, that I think that they're coming close to us to observe us, just as we go to zoos and to see animals, or we'll go to a safari or something like that, to go watch them in their natural environment. And I think that you've turned that around, and from the eyes of a Sasquatch, they're interested in watching us. So I got written down here that it's a great way to keep an eye on us. And the only way they can do that, they're not going to take the T and come down, or the train, a commuter rail, or a bus to come down into the inner city and watch us. They've got to stay out on the fringes. If they're anything like us, they're curious, but yet they're leery of us, so they stay just in the shadows, just out of our range of sight, so most people aren't looking, and you won't see, right? And that they just keep an eye on us. That's kind of what I was getting around to right there. Now, some of the similarities that I've written down here are one is we as a species, humans, we have close family units, and I think that Sasquatch has that same type of thing. I think that they are close knit, especially if their numbers are low, which I think that their population numbers are pretty low. That would bring them even closer. I believe that just like us, that they love to travel and explore, and that they're curious. I think their curiosity can sometimes maybe get the young ones in trouble from time to time. But I think that they're curious just as we are about them. I think that their curiosity is probably magnified times 100, because so many of us have no idea that they're there and don't even believe in it. And that's with this need for entertainment. I believe that they're entertained by watching Hiker Dave stumbling down a trail. And, I've had a pine cone thrown at me before, at least my opinion that it was thrown at me. And I think that maybe it was a young one, a juvenile, just got a kick out of seeing me hike in there day after week after week after week. And I'm just walking all over the place. And I think it finally wanted to play, have fun and entertain itself and toss a pine cone at me. And then this is a couple of ones that are obvious. The search for sustenance, for water and food. Of course, us as a species, we need this to survive, and so don't they. And, I hike a lot near water, and in the forest, these forested areas I go to, the food is plentiful. Berries and deer, moose, and fox and rabbits and all this kind of thing. So the food is there and the water is there, and they need that just like we do. The communication, we are stuck with, and I don't mean stuck, we are just a slave to communication, especially nowadays. And it's vital for us to be able to communicate in, like, with our loved ones and our family and friends and stuff, that communication is key. And it started as simply as basic as talking. And I believe that they have their own system of communication that may consist of wood knocks and whoops. And I think that some of the tree breaks and tree leans and sapling bends and sapling breaks are part of their communication system. Again, my theory, but I try to tie all these things together: the water, the food source, the tree breaks, the wood knocks and stuff, as really a lot of that stuff is their communication. This kind of ties in with why we don't find bodies, but I believe that they may bury their dead, or they may pile rocks on their dead, or put them in a cave somewhere. I don't think they did just walk away from one of their own and just let it just rot on the forest floor. And I mentioned in a prior video that a deer carcass in the forest lasts basically about 3 days, and it's just scattered about, and you'd never know it was there. So I believe that they may not bury their dead, but I believe that they have some kind of system that they use to respectfully dispose of one of their own when they're deceased. This one is about the temperament of humans and the temperament of Sasquatch, that there's good and bad. I do strongly believe, just as in our society, that there are some evildoers and there's some really nasty people out there. And I think the possibility exists that Sasquatch as well has some bad seeds or bad apples that may snatch a human and may be responsible for some of the missing hikers and missing people in the national forest and stuff. I think there's a lot of other reasons why the people go missing, and other animals that could be responsible. But who's to say that a rogue Bigfoot isn't, maybe is older and can't catch a deer, maybe out of necessity. It will take a human and kill it and possibly eat. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I'm saying it's something that I think about. That maybe if it has issues, maybe it's got some kind of mental disability. You don't know. It could be sick and, again, older, and it can't catch its own food, and it's the end of its life, and it's just trying to hang on, and the possibility is there that you've got the good and the bad. Territory markers. Now, we mark our territories with fences, flags. People put flags up on their properties and stuff like that, and mark their territory with stone walls, for instance. No trespassing signs, just things like this to mark boundaries and stuff like that. And I believe Sasquatch, I definitely think Sasquatch would mark its territories with boundary markers or things like this. And I had somebody comment once on my channel that said, in a small forested area like a state park, like where I hike and stuff, why, if it's so small, why would Sasquatch mark a trail if it knows where it's going? And I don't think it's marking a trail because it doesn't know where it is. I don't believe that. I think it might mark a trail or its territory for future other Sasquatch that may come into the area in the future, and that they'll know that this area has been traveled, and perhaps it could look at a tree break or a sapling break and tell the age of it, and be able to say, okay, one of my fellow Sasquatch hasn't been through this area in a couple of years. This may be a good place for a food source, where if it sees a fresh, brand new break or a brand new tree bend, maybe not a tree bend, but a sapling break, if I can tell how old one is, at least if it's been there for years or if it's brand new, I'm sure a Sasquatch can tell. And if it sees a brand new break, it may know to move on because this area is currently being hunted or something like that. My theory only, of course. And as we do, we go to great lengths to preserve our species, or to keep, you know, without even realizing it, what we do in our daily routine, our daily lives, to keep ourselves going from generation to generation. We go to great lengths to preserve ourselves. We have that fight or flight mechanism in ourselves, and I believe that Sasquatch has that same, of course, along with probably any other creature that has that will to survive, that fight to survive, and I think it will go to great lengths to hide itself, to keep itself a myth, you know, to keep people not knowing where it is, what it is, if it even exists, that it goes to great lengths to preserve itself. And then that kind of brings me to my last thought here about, I've mentioned this before in a video, I can't remember what video it was, but on sightings, on how sightings may happen and why they happen. And I do believe, you know, they're not perfect, that they will make a mistake. I think that I would say the majority of sightings, and again, my theory, my opinion, are of young ones. And if an adult, full-grown one, you know, a wise Bigfoot or Sasquatch is sighted or spotted, there may be a reason for it. You may be seeing it on purpose as a diversion from maybe a young one that may be somewhere in the area, or a sick one that is slower, and it may divert your attention to itself, so that other Sasquatch, that young, maybe an infant or a small Sasquatch of lesser abilities, has that opportunity to gain more of a escape avenue while you're picking your jaw up off the ground and changing your skivvies because you just spotted a 10-foot tall, 900-pound Sasquatch. It gives that opportunity for maybe a Sasquatch with lesser abilities, slower, older, maybe sick or hurt, to get away while it is distracting you. And I think maybe there may be sightings too, that the reason why that someone stumbles across one or sees one is that it's in the act of doing something, and it itself is distracted, in that it could be digging grubs, like one of the videos where there's one sitting in like a swamp and it's pulling a tree apart. That Bigfoot was, and I believe that is a authentic Bigfoot in that video. And it was so preoccupied with what it was doing that it didn't realize that this gentleman had been sitting here, sitting in the, you know, with his back up against a tree or whatever he was doing, hog hunting or whatever, had been sitting there probably for 3 or 4 hours. And this Bigfoot had no idea, and it's hungry and it's doing its thing. And I think that's the possibility of why sometimes that they get spotted. So that's that. A couple talking points and some food for thought. Thank you so much, you guys, for coming by. I really appreciate it, and I'll definitely see you guys on the next one.